Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lesson 2 on our Writing Task 2 series. Today, we're looking at feedback on essays to highlight the importance of task achievement, task response. In the first video, we looked at how to write an agree-disagree essay and really give a good task achievement response so that you're getting the best band score for this important criteria. And in this essay, let's take a look at some feedback on two different essays. We're going to look at two different essays written on the same topic, an agree-disagree essay. And as we continue, I'd like you to decide if we're looking at a band score 6 essay or a band score 8 essay. So which one is it? I've chosen two essays written by my own students to highlight how the band score 8 student managed to get a higher band score through good task achievement. Here is the essay title. Housing is essential for people. Some argue that the government should offer free housing for people who cannot afford it. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? As we learned in Lesson 1, when we have the essay title, it's important to study it for a couple of minutes to understand your argument. Do you agree with free housing provided by the government, or do you disagree? So you need to take a stance one way or the other. And your argument, your main idea, needs to be crystal clear in the introduction with two reasons. Let's see what my first student wrote. So she wrote, accommodation is a necessary item for a lot of people, and some consider that a house to live is one of the basic luxuries for every human being. I believe that the authorities should provide a house for many members of our society. Although many people may oppose this idea, there are several reasons to back up this argument. Take a look at this introduction and make your own decision. Is this band score 5, band score 6, or higher? Well, first of all, the student has written a background statement. And as I said in the previous lesson, it's not necessary to write a background statement, and it's really just a waste of time in this case. The other thing is that the student has said, well, accommodation is a necessary item, and some consider that a house to live in is one of the basic luxuries for every human being. So this word necessary item is an absolute contradiction to the word luxury. Luxury is something that is more than necessary. So that first sentence doesn't make sense. It's not coherent. The other thing is that the question itself asks about free housing for people who cannot afford it, but the writer refers only to a house for many members of our society. It doesn't answer the question because the question is not about every member or many members of society. The question is about people who cannot afford housing. So that doesn't bode well for the answer. She then says, although many people may oppose this idea, there are several reasons to back up this argument. But she doesn't exactly say, well, what those reasons are. And as I said in Lesson 1, you need to provide reasons for your idea. Overall, the writer's introduction is vague and her main idea is unclear. We know that she believes that the authorities should provide a house, but for whom and why? So she doesn't really give reasons for her opinion. So in terms of task response, this is a very weak introduction and doesn't merit more than band score 5 or band score 5.5. Let's look at my other student's response. It has been discussed that governing powers ought to provide free accommodation for people who could not buy their own house. I fully agree with this plan because it will prevent homelessness and reduce poverty for a sector of society. So in this case, there's no boring background statement. What the writer has done is she's absolutely reformulated the main statement in the essay. So it's really a very clear reformulation. She's then used, I fully agree with. That's a clear key phrase. We know that she absolutely agrees with this idea. And she gives two very clear reasons. Also, she refers to the prevention of homelessness and reducing poverty for this sector of society. Those are the people who cannot buy their own house. So we know her opinion and we know the two reasons for her opinion. It's a very straightforward introduction. Overall, the introduction is really clear and her main idea is specific with two reasons. So in terms of task response, she definitely deserves a much higher band score 8 or 9. Now let's look at main body paragraph 1. The first student wrote, some people are ill, disabled, or have very large families. For example, my friend Frank is a father who has been sick for years and he is unable to work. His mother is the only one of the family who can work because all of the kids are all studying at school. The rent is a heavy burden for Frank, so that they need to move every year from place to place. In that way, the children cannot have a good educational environment. Some examples demonstrate that some families do need help from the government to offer free housing. So in this paragraph, the topic sentence is not clear. I don't really see a topic sentence. There's just a reference to some people who are ill and disabled with large families. The other thing is that the story about Frank, the father, is confusing. We know that he's sick and he doesn't work, but the rent is a heavy burden for him. But it's the mother who's working, so it doesn't really make sense. If Frank is not working, how is he paying the rent? There's also a reference to education, but why? The topic is about free housing. It's not about education. Here, the student has completely gone off topic. He's talking about education rather than housing. The other thing is that the writer goes directly into the example after the first sentence. So there's no topic sentence, there's no explanation, and an example that is not clear or understandable. So unfortunately, this writer has not at all responded to the question in paragraph 1, and he or she is getting a lower band score. If we look at my other student's main body paragraph 1, she wrote, firstly, free housing immediately prevents homelessness. Once the government provides accommodation to people who can't afford it, an entire family is off the streets. Social welfare housing in London City provides council housing for people who can't afford to buy their own homes. In this way, residents can buy half of the property over several years, while the other half is owned by the government. Studies have shown that this initiative has reduced the level of homelessness in the inner city. Here we go. We've got a very nice topic sentence at the beginning with firstly, so nice cohesive device. So we know immediately that the writer thinks that free housing prevents homelessness. So it's very simple and short, but clear. And then she refers to the explanation. She explains that when a government provides accommodation to the people who can't afford it, it prevents a homelessness of a family. And then she gives the example about London City. So it's a clear explanation explained by the welfare system. The example is coherent, and there is also that cohesive final sentence. Studies have shown that this initiative has reduced the level of homelessness in the inner city. So overall, this is a very understandable paragraph. The examiner sees it and understands it. Whereas in the first example, the examiner cannot understand it. It's not clear. And the examiner is going through essay after essay after essay, She doesn't want to have to completely read over the sentences for a long period of time. That will merit a lower band score. But this paragraph is absolutely clear and merits band score 9. Main body paragraph 2. The first student wrote, the second reason to support my argument is that living costs in the city are too high for a newcomer on a low income to afford. For instance, my sister Sandy graduated from a university last year, and she started a new job in Taipei. She is obliged to spend half of her salary on expenses. Additionally, she needs to pay for a tuition loan. Because of this situation, she cannot have any savings for future plans. Consequently, policies offering free housing for these types of people would allow them to contribute more to society. So the writer attempts to give a good second reason with the topic sentence. But the problem is that this idea was never introduced in the introduction. It's completely out of the blue. So it's disconnected with the entire essay. The other thing is that the reference to Cindy is immediate. There's no explanation. The example just comes out of the blue also, and it's off topic. It doesn't relate to housing. And the example doesn't really clarify how free housing for students can help the rest of society. For example, people who are poor or people in the inner city. So off topic, not a clear example. Again, very poor task response here. If we look at my other student's paragraph, she wrote, it's clear that free housing reduces poverty globally. Once an individual or family is accommodated, there is a much greater chance that the residents can find work. As employers require a fixed address for new applicants, people with housing can find employment much faster than if they were homeless. Moreover, having a fixed abode allows inhabitants to other resources, such as assistance, public schooling, and religious support. It is for this reason that several governments already provide free housing along with multiple social supports for those in need. Topic sentence is short, but the writer explains it in the second and third sentences. So we know exactly her opinion that free housing reduces poverty. And my student also developed her argument by explaining how free housing reduces poverty in the example. Overall, this paragraph is very understandable and very clear. The conclusion of the essay, my first student wrote, in a nutshell, I believe that the government should offer housing free of charge to new professionals and people struggling with disability and family issues. In that way, citizens of our country who are challenged by difficulties can give back to society in a more equal and prosperous way. Do you see what's wrong with this conclusion? I mean, apart from the linker, which is inappropriate, we don't use in a nutshell. It's too informal for an IELTS essay. Instead, we use to conclude. For some reason, a lot of my students seem to use this linker in a nutshell over and over again, and it's just not appropriate. Regarding task response, the student is off topic. The question was specifically about people who cannot afford housing. So that's people who are in financial difficulty, but she refers to people like new professionals and people with disability. That's not the same thing. So she didn't understand the question, or she didn't take the time to really read it and to understand it. And in the second sentence, it refers to citizens of our country giving back to society. It doesn't even refer to the question at the beginning in the essay title. What can we learn from this? We can learn that it's absolutely vital to take time to read the question and to understand it. So those 2 or 4 or 6 minutes that you spend at the beginning to read the question, to break it down, to establish your opinion is golden, because that will help you to give a good task response. Overall, her conclusion fails to answer the question and the task is not achieved. We look at my second student's response. This is the lady who got band score 9, actually. And she wrote, to conclude, I feel that all governments should implement free housing for the sector of society that needs housing urgently. This will result in a significant drop in homelessness and lowered poverty in countries worldwide. Now, today we're not examining the vocabulary, but you can see that she's used the correct linker. Her use of language is very appropriate, very nice, complex sentences. But apart from all of that, she fully answers the initial question. She says that the government should pay for housing for those who cannot afford it. So that's the main opinion. And she gives those 2 reasons in the conclusion also, the drop in homelessness and the lowered poverty. So she's really summarizing it very beautifully. Overall, the conclusion sums up her main opinion and 2 reasons presented in the introduction and throughout the essay. This is a very succinct conclusion. So wrapping up, what is task achievement? It means you're devoting 4 minutes at the start of writing task 2 to fully understand the question and formulate your opinion. So take about 4 minutes to do that before you create your vocabulary and your structure. Answer all parts of the question. So if it's problem solution essay, answer the problem, explain the solution. If it's agree, disagree, explain why you agree or disagree and give 2 reasons. If it's a discussion essay, discuss both views. Discuss view 1, discuss view 2. If it's a double question essay, answer both questions. If it's advantages, disadvantages, discuss the advantages, discuss the disadvantages, and explain which one outweighs the other. That is task response. Fully develop your idea with a simple topic sentence, something very clear explanation, and an example that is understandable to the examiner. Make sure that you use the same opinion or main idea throughout the essay. That way your task response is equal in each part and consistent. And your conclusion is a summary of the essay's main ideas and reasons. So you must refer to each component of the essay in the conclusion. That's it on task achievement. In our next video, we'll cover lexical resource. Stay tuned and see you in lesson 3. Thank you. Bye.